Yes, yeah, yeah. Here I go again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dear friends, dear colleagues, can you please stop your private conversations and postpone them for the afternoon? Thank you very much. So we resume the conference, which started yesterday. This is part of, I repeat for those who are here or not here, or watching or not. This is the first edition of the Bucharest Hub Days. The Academia Europaea Bucharest Hub Days. Many of you, as I gathered from conversations, did not understand yesterday that this is an event of the Academia Europaea Bucharest Hub. Well, people understand all kinds of things in life, according to their possibilities. I will not repeat what I said yesterday, but yes, indeed, this is the Academia Europaea Bucharest Hub. It was opened exactly 1 year ago on May 9, 2025, based on an agreement between Academia Europaea and the Romanian Academy. It was signed on behalf of the Romanian Academy by the president, but the then president of the Romanian Academy, Ioan Aurel Pop, and it was signed, on the other hand, by the president of the Academia Europaea, Donald Dingwell. We are graciously supported logistically, financially, by the Romanian Academy, and we are very grateful for that. But our mandate is European and indeed global. We are working on developing a major hub, global hub, mainly in the fields of humanities and social sciences, opening towards all the other disciplines in the best academic traditions of Europe, which are placing the humanities at the core. The word academia, for those who want to Google, indicates things like that. Now, yesterday I told briefly the story of the beginning of this Academia Europaea Hub, and I mentioned that Professor Gregory Claeys, himself a veteran member of the Academia Europaea, had the initiative of nominating me in 2018. I accepted it in Jerusalem because he can be persuasive, and I have known him for too long to be able to refuse him. So then we started the process by which the membership of the Academia Europaea in Romania and among Romanians in the diaspora, which is very important to keep in mind, because we also, I personally and others, we very actively nominated Romanians from the diaspora. I say it in English with second thoughts because normally I should say diaspora, as we know what that is. I think that my colleague Ioannis Liritis is not in the room. He is Greek and like some of my ancestors, and he would be immediately, how shall I say, taken aback by this barbarian pronunciation of diaspora. And so this is how, when we created the Academia Europaea Bucharest Hub, we asked Gregory Claeys to kindly serve on the on our advisory board. Our advisory board is illustrious, with the current president of the Academia Europaea, the former president of the Academia Europaea. There's a second member of the advisory board who in many ways is the co-creator of this hub, and that is Dr. David Coates, here present. But maybe I should mention, David, that before you, maybe this was the reason why you helped me so much. David Coates, as a young student and a very ambitious rugby player in Great Britain, was was coming to communist Romania, to the good old times, as a rugby player. So maybe that you remain with a soft spot from Romania from there. Although the rugby games themselves had mixed results, 1-1, because when the Romanian hosts realized that these guys are good, and they won the first game, they brought in the senior rugby team of Romania, which of course smashed the young upcoming. Okay, but so I would like to use this opportunity to do a very simple thing, which is really very symbolic. And I would like to ask Gheorghe Claes to join me here for a second. We initiated this, and the president of the Romanian Academy, Marius Andrei, signed it, which is a certificate of academic achievement, which is awarded to Gheorghe Claes, Professor Emeritus of History, University of London, and the chair of the Utopian Studies Society Europe. And I have to admit, I wrote the motivation. For his contribution to the study of political ideas, utopianism, and sociability, you recognize that it's me, and for making possible, among others, the Academia Europaea Bucharest. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sorin. I'm deeply honored, and I extend my thanks in turn to the Academy and to the rest of the hub. Indeed, I've known Sorin, as he mentioned, for some decades now, but I knew as soon as I became involved in the Academy of Europe that if anyone was to be the ideal representative in Romania of its extension here, it was a man of vast skills, talents, persuasive capabilities, knowledge, social connections. No other one that I could think of could have fitted the bill as well as.
This was meant as a tribute to you.
But it's a collaborative exercise, as all these things are. And it's been a great pleasure to be a part of this process, to be able to see the Academy swell in its enthusiasm and its reach here in Bucharest. So thank you kindly.
Thank you, sir. Now, someone is waiting in London to be called to duty, and that is Professor Liviu Matei, an old friend, an old collaborator from our times together at the Central European University. He is widely known internationally. I don't have to introduce him to in such details. He is a professor of higher education and public policy and the head of the King's School of Education, Communication and Society at King's College London. He is going to talk to us about reimagining academic freedom in the age of AI. I think you hear us. I can see you making sense. Go ahead, Liviu.
Good morning. Greetings from London. Can someone help me, give me the right to share my screen? Yeah, it is done. Thank you. So maybe I should start by congratulating everybody who was involved in opening this Academia Europaea in Bucharest. I think it is a very important development. So going straight to the subject, reimagining academic freedom in the age of AI. So what I propose to talk about, and maybe we'll have a chance to discuss, is a little bit of a global picture in the area of academic freedom. But since we have very little time for this, I will concentrate on two main trends in this area. The first one is what is usually called the shrinking space for academic freedom everywhere in the world. And the second trend, which I think can be called reimagining academic freedom, and I'll explain briefly what I mean by this as well. And in this context, I suggest that we discuss a little bit about the factors that had an influence on these trends, and then more specifically about the place of AI. So the first trend, as we learn from the Academic Freedom Index, everywhere in the world, the space for academic freedom is shrinking. There are increasing attacks on academic freedom everywhere. This is a map based on the Academic Freedom Index of 2025. You can see part of the world with the countries colored in different shades of gray and brown. The darker the country, the worse the situation of academic freedom is. As you can see, for example, here I think countries like Myanmar, Afghanistan, or Saudi Arabia are among the worst. Perhaps interestingly, Russia and India are quite bad, but they are not different. What is a little bit of a good news, if we look at Europe, it is rather in a light color, except for Hungary, and that is probably going to change soon. But there is this assessment based on the Academic Freedom Index that everywhere in the world, the scores on this scale are going down. And what is also interesting, if we look for a moment at the other half of the world, at least in this projection, the United States, which used to be the global reference, the gold standard for academic freedom, has turned into something that is not different when it comes to academic freedom than some of the clearly undemocratic, authoritarian, even dictatorships in the countries in the world. So this is what the Academic Freedom Index is telling us, that the space for academic freedom is shrinking basically everywhere in the world. The Academic Freedom Index is not telling us why is this happening and what is happening. What does it mean that more and more countries have lower and lower scores regarding academic freedom? So there is a second trend that I wanted to discuss, which helps to clarify what is happening, and this is what I call a process of reimagining academic freedom, which consists mainly in the emergence of new frameworks of reference for academic freedom. And I'll explain in a moment what I mean by that. I should say that, differently from the Academic Freedom Index, and analysis using this tool, frameworks of reference, shows that not all developments are negative. There are also positive developments as a matter of fact. So just to take two examples, and this is also to start talking about frameworks of reference. If we look at what is happening in the United States in the Trump era, both at federal level and at state level, we can analyze this through the prism of frameworks of reference. The United States used to have a very good, supportive framework of reference for academic freedom, which was based primarily on two statements issued by the American Association of University Professors in 1914 and 1940, and that framework worked remarkably well for decades. Now, come Trump and also DeSantis, they started to replace this framework of reference with a different one. And framework of reference, as I will present in a moment, includes, for example, a conceptual reference point for academic freedom. What is understood by academic freedom and what everybody in that particular framework should understand by it. It also contains guidelines and institutional mechanisms that are related to that understanding. In the United States, just to continue for a moment, the example, the AAUP framework provided that decisions on curriculum, what is taught, but also decisions on pedagogy, how is taught, belong to the faculty, to the professoriate primarily. Now come DeSantis, and he changed the legislation in Florida saying, no, it's not the professors, the faculty who decide on the curriculum, but parents should have a very important role. And that resulted very soon, for example, in books of Dostoevsky being forbidden as a teaching material in the classroom because associations of parents didn't like that. So that is a little bit of an example about how an old framework of reference is being changed with a new one, and this is not a positive development, obviously. But speaking of positive development, something remarkable happened in Europe after the Central European University affair of 2017, 2019, 2020. There was a realization at that time that we don't have a common framework of reference in Europe. We don't have a common conceptual reference for academic freedom in Europe. And there was a lot of mobilization, which resulted between 2018 and 2024 in something really remarkable. All countries of Europe, including at the beginning Belarus and Russia until the invasion of Ukraine. So all countries of Europe adopted a common list of so-called fundamental values, exactly 6, starting with academic freedom, academic integrity, and institutional autonomy, plus 3 others. More than that, the same countries, through the voice of their ministers responsible for higher education, agreed on common definitions of these values. So it is basically for the first time in Europe, in the history of Europe, that we have at least nominally a common conceptual reference for academic freedom. It is a 2.5 pages document, a remarkable document, no less so because I was one of the drafters, of course. But this is fundamentally a positive development, among others, because the ministers of these 49, 50 countries, depending how we are counting, made also commitments to protect and promote academic freedom in their national system through very specific measures. So there was a commitment to protect and promote academic freedom in the European higher education area, not to restrict it as in the United States. So this is a new framework of reference, which is a remarkable positive development in the world. Now, very, very briefly regarding the concept itself of frameworks of reference for academic freedom. A framework of reference for academic freedom includes a conceptual reference point. So, if I am a student at the University of Bucharest, for example, how do I know what is academic freedom? I place myself in a particular framework of reference. Maybe my university, University of Bucharest, has a code of conduct or another document which says specifically, explicitly, what is academic freedom. And that definition, it's a bit more than a definition, but let's talk about it as a definition. That is the reference point, the anchor for members of the respective university. Very often, frameworks of reference for academic freedom contain guidelines for the practice and protection of academic freedom, or simply for enforcing the respective conceptualization and codification. As I will also discuss very briefly in a moment, in 2023, a new law was adopted here in the UK called, very interestingly, Higher Education, parenthesis, freedom of speech. So this law puts forward a new definition of academic freedom, a conceptual reference point, basically saying academic freedom and freedom of speech are the same, but it also provides certain guidelines regarding who should do what about the respective law, the respective conceptualization of codification of academic freedom. For example, a new or an existing office in the Ministry of Education, Department for Education here, was put in charge primarily of enforcing these provisions about freedom of speech, academic freedom. Frameworks of reference also contain elements of codification, which means that academic freedom is codified as a human right sometimes, as a constitutional or fundamental rights other time, as a value, as I presented in the case of the European higher education area, fundamental values, or it can be, academic freedom can be codified as a governance principle, for example, in internal university documents. So academic freedom, depending on the framework of reference, may be codified as a different thing: human right, fundamental right, professional right sometimes, and so on. Frameworks of reference very often also, not always, but very often contain provision about institution and institutional mechanisms. So are there any particular institutions? It could be disciplinary committee in a university that is in charge of enforcing the respective policy. Less often, frameworks of reference contain also provisions about monitoring. So now, how does one know what is happening with academic freedom in the respective system? I'm not going to talk a lot more about this framework of reference, but just to say, frameworks of reference for academic freedom are not necessarily legal in nature. They can be non-legal and still extremely consequential. And maybe I'll illustrate this with some examples. So there are frameworks of reference at different levels, from institutional to global. And these are just recent examples about either new frameworks of reference or kind of adjustments, revisions of existing framework of reference, which speak to this idea of reimagining academic freedom in new, recent, contemporary conditions. In 2024, the United Nations adopted a set of principles for implementing the right to academic freedom. I mean, this is very interesting because there is no right to academic freedom defined as such in any particular UN document. The right to academic freedom is inferred from the right to education, going back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But in order to make this global UN framework for academic freedom work, the General Assembly basically adopted a set of principles. Who should do what? What are the responsibilities of the states vis-a-vis academic freedom in particular? What are the responsibilities of universities also to a smaller extent? Another global framework of reference for academic freedom is based on two UNESCO recommendations. Perhaps the most directly relevant is the 2017 UNESCO recommendation on the status of university teaching personnel. That is very interesting in itself. It is a recommendation, but it has been ratified by more than 120 countries of the world. It didn't work anywhere in the world, basically. It puts forward a beautiful conceptual reference, a definition of academic freedom based on the protection of tenure. But UNESCO started last year a process of revision of this recommendation, which is again, an effort trying to address new recent developments, including a process of reimagining academic freedom. Maybe last example here, So these are kind of intergovernmental frameworks of reference. You might be familiar with Magna Carta Universitatum. So this is not Magna Carta Libertatum. It's Magna Carta Universitatum, adopted in 1988. First time, revised recently in 2020. Magna Carta Universitatum is not a treaty. It's not an intergovernmental agreement. It is a statement, a declaration issued by universities from around the world, signed by more than 1,000 universities, which basically defines academic freedom and institutional autonomy as values. So not as human rights, not other type of entities, but as values. And although, you know, this is simply a statement, a declaration, it is a very consequential framework of reference. So these were examples of global frameworks of reference that have been revised, adapted recently. There are also regional frameworks of reference, and I discussed already about the European higher education area, fundamental values. This process was very forceful between 2018 and 2024, finalized with the adoption of the list of values, the definitions of the values, and formal commitments by all members of the European higher education area vis-à-vis this value. And one commitment, for example, is to change national legislation so that it reflects this new definition. So Romania nominally committed to amend the national legislation to make it consistent with this, with the definition of academic freedom adopted in Rome in 2020. The UK made the same commitment. All countries of Europe made that commitment. It is interesting to see what is happening, and we are now doing with the team an exercise of monitoring the implementation of these commitments. Are governments doing what they promised to do vis-à-vis academic freedom and the other values? We are going to issue on a significant report towards the end of the current calendar year. There are other efforts. In the European Parliament had a different attitude, for example, to the CEU crisis or the crisis in Turkey in higher education after the 2016 coup. The European Parliament was of the opinion that laws are needed. And the first idea was to change the treaty of the EU, like the constitution of the EU, and include provisions about academic freedom that would be applicable in the cases like when, the Hungarian parliament changed their national law, which resulted in infringement of academic freedom. Of course, that was not possible. It was not possible to amend the treaty of the EU for this purpose. The European Parliament tried to develop legislation internally. That was very difficult. In the end, the Parliament asked the Commission to draft legislation, and that is now happening. The European Commission is developing European Union legislation. So this would be, if it ever materializes, and it might, it will represent a legal framework of reference for academic freedom in Europe. There are not identical but similar efforts in other parts of the world to develop regional frameworks of reference in Latin America and in Africa. There are also national frameworks of reference, and I already discussed briefly about the UK higher education freedom of speech law, which creates a completely new, different framework of reference for academic freedom at the national level. So this is not regional, it's not global, it's national. And actually we can talk about national framework of reference in all countries of the world. I'm not going to discuss example. In Sweden, for example, there is a vivid discussion at present about changing both the regulations about academic freedom and the very understanding of academic freedom to include, in particular, provisions about science security. There are also recent frameworks of reference for academic freedom adopted at the institutional level. In the UK, all universities were required under the new law to change their internal policies, code of conduct to reflect the new law. To give an example from another part of the world, many of you would be familiar with the old Chicago principles for freedom of speech on campus. More than 100 universities in the US adopted this principle since 2015, making them their own frameworks of reference. So to summarize, there are new frameworks of reference or revised frameworks of reference for academic freedom at all these levels, institutional, national, regional, and also global, which represent to some extent efforts to reimagine, to rethink academic freedom. Now, one question is, what are the factors feeding into both these trends, shrinking space for academic freedom and reimagining academic freedom? Well, some of the factors that are very often discussed are changes in the dominant political winds, the impact of populism, illiberalism, democratic backsliding affected the way in which academic freedom was understood, regulated, and practiced. See the case of Hungary, see the case of the United States. Geopolitics, new geopolitical situations also resulted in new ways of imagining, thinking about academic freedom, regulating and practicing it. We in the UK have, another law, not the one that I mentioned, which says academic freedom, freedom of speech, are restricted by the duty to prevent terrorism. For example, in Sweden that I mentioned earlier, there is a discussion about the need, for example, for a university to ask clearance from secret services before they engage in international cooperation. So is that a restriction of academic freedom? Certainly. And there is also everything else about what the public and the general public and the politician think about higher education and about academic freedom in the post-truth era, anti-meritocracy attitude. So why should the academics decide what they teach, what they research, and how they do it? They have no standing to do that. Some would say the entire anti-woke discourse. Now, what is interesting is that at the European level, the mix of policy narratives, ideology is a little bit different than in other parts of the world. We still have a mix of knowledge society, neoliberalism, Europeanization, and appreciation for this and for internationalization of higher education. And just to give a short example, what do I mean by this? There is still a belief at the level of the European Union institutions that company competitiveness, national competitiveness, and the union's competitiveness are based on knowledge, should be based on knowledge. So the more and the better knowledge we have, the more competitive we are. So that's the neoliberal part of it, the competitiveness part. Therefore, if that is the case, if we want to be competitive as a country, as a union, we need to cultivate knowledge, we need to cultivate research, and that cannot be done without academic freedom and institutional autonomy. So in this regard, Europe is very, very different from other parts of the world. And in fact, it is slowly becoming, maybe it is already, the new global reference, positive reference for academic freedom. But I'm getting towards the end of my presentation. Is AI a factor in all this? Is AI affecting in any way reimagining academic freedom? Well, AI has an impact on academic freedom, I think we can say, but has not contributing reimagining academic freedom, despite some expectation. So AI is not contributing to new frameworks of reference. It's not contributing to new ways of conceptualizing, codifying, or monitoring academic freedom. Academic AI is not even mentioned in these frameworks of reference that I have just presented, and when they have been revised or when they emerge anew. Within the existing frameworks, there is sometimes a discussion about new codifications and duties, but this is not about the freedoms, it's more about the duty part of academic freedom, academic integrity. Many institutions adopted internal regulations, many universities adopted internal regulations to have something there to protect against plagiarism, misuse of AI in research, and so on. But this is not about the freedom part. It is more about the duty, the obligation part of academic freedom. So is AI impacting academic freedom? Is AI an academic freedom matter? So if we take the core tenets of academic freedom, freedom to teach, freedom to learn. Not everybody would agree that is part of academic freedom, freedom to do research, and freedom to take part in governance. Is AI influencing in reality, de facto, any of this? Absolutely yes. So AI is shaping, some people would say, encroaching curriculum and pedagogy, taking away some of the control of the faculty, of the professoriate in teaching, in curriculum design and in teaching, which leads to certain feelings of AI anxiety. Will there be fewer teachers in the future? Will there be no teachers at all because AI will take over? Or at least, this freedom to choose what to teach, how to teach is restricted by the fact that AI is playing more and more a role in this. Freedom to learn. It is true that AI creates new learning opportunities, but there is a discussion about the fact that it affects negatively the intellectual autonomy of students being led by algorithms and so on. For example, it affects learning to think independently. Now, there is quite a lot of discussion in the world about how AI impacts freedom to do research, and a couple of examples that I wanted to mention here. There is often we can see self-censorship. Researchers are careful what they publish, how they present what they publish, or whether to publish or not the results of their research. This is sometimes called blandification. Made it bland. Don't make it, as big as it might be based on the results of your research, because that might create a digital hysteria. So that is not directly or exclusively a matter of AI. It's a matter of the engagement of all kinds of stakeholders and actors in a discussion about the results of science. But AI makes this easier, and there are examples of medical journals, for example, which are asking their editors to identify potentially controversial aspects in articles submitted for publication, and maybe discuss with the authors to remove that, to anticipate digital hysteria. So these are issues of contraception, for example, but not always. So if one definition of academic freedom is the freedom to do research, to choose the research topic, methods without fear of reprisal, this is a case of infringement of academic freedom, because there is a fear of reprisal. You know, if I publish this article, you know, the public will, or members of the public will react, the governor will react, my vice chancellor will react, I may lose my job, for example. So I better be careful what I publish. There is another element here, and there is no universal agreement that this is part of the scope of academic freedom, but for some it is, the freedom to take part in university governance. And here too, the impact is rather negative. There is AI-based evaluation for the purpose of promotion, for example. And there are fears that AI promotes biases in this automated evaluation, again, for the purpose of promotion, for example, perpetuates biases. And that also results in anxiety, fear about this. And now another element of this is the anxiety related to technology-enhanced monitoring and control. As an academic, I have to be careful what I post on social media, because that can be very easily found. If I criticize my university or my governance, that is easier to find with AI, and then there might be negative consequences for me as a member of the academic community. So in conclusion, AI does influence academic freedom, and it is a factor in shrinking the space for academic freedom, but it has not contributed to the efforts of reimagining, reconceptualizing, recodifying academic freedom. And I would end with two questions. Should AI be included actually in these efforts, and maybe will it? So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Liviu. This is a comprehensive image of what is going on around the world, as Liviu himself is very deeply involved in the discussions and changes institutional around the world, as I said, and for many years. Thank you, Liviu. All the best. Now you can return to your duties. I know you're busy. Now we move to the next paper, which is by Radu Ioan Ursu, who is an associate professor at the Carol Davila University of Medicine and Pharmacy. On the program, I baptized Carol Davila with the name of Alexandru Davila, his very interesting son, by the way. It was running in the same family, at least. So Radu Ioan Ursu is going to talk to us about From Genome to Algorithm, Reframing Medical Genetics Across the Biological Continuum in the Age of AI. You have the floor.
Good morning. Before getting into understanding what the role of AI might be in medical genetics and in biology in the end, we should ask ourselves, why do we need AI in genetics? It starts with where genetics stands today with the information we have gathered throughout the past 100 years. Actually, the genetics we have today started around the year 2000, when the Human Genome Project finally got its final results. And those results were really interesting because we understood finally the structure of our genetic code, the number of genes we have, and this is the structure of our genetic code. It's a quaternary code, comparable to the binary code of the softwares of the computers and so on, but it's a much more complicated and longer genetic code. By then, we knew that we had 100,000 genes, for example. We knew that all of the DNA was coding DNA, meaning all of the DNA makes proteins, has clear functions. Then we understood that we only have around 20,000 genes. And those 20,000 genes are just 1.5% of that entire genome. So the rest of 98.5% are non-coding DNA. They seem to have no function. Now, we do know now that there's no such thing as no function within the DNA, and that non-coding DNA, which was called junk DNA back then, now it's not called junk DNA anymore. It's called regulatory DNA because we know it has a function towards regulating the expression of the coding DNA. Now, those 20,000 genes and all those information we got at the end of the Human Genome Project, which, by the way, took around 10 years and cost around 100 million pounds. Now, sequencing an individual takes around a couple of days and costs around a couple of hundred euros. So technology changed a bit throughout the past decades. So starting from that information, we started gathering more and more data about the human beings and the human DNA and the biology of mankind. And we understood through different types of studies, and the most frequent studies were the genome-wide association studies, of course, because we had our genome now and we had our reference genome, and we could compare it to the genomes of individuals who had different types of disorders and find out if they had something wrong in their DNA. And that something wrong might be the start from understanding the diagnostics of the disease and then getting to the point of understanding the therapies for the disease. So all of these studies led to many variants and mutations and genes associated with different types of disorders, from the rare diseases we knew that were pure genetic to the common human disorders for which we didn't know quite how genetics was involved in. Now, all of these omics of the omics era emerged then, because we started seeing different types of structures in different types of functions of the biological chain. From the central dogma of biology, DNA makes RNA, which makes proteins, to understanding how these structures actually affect the production of the disease. And we know there are mutations inside these genes and inside the DNA, and different types of mutations. We knew that from the 50s and 1950s, 60s, since the structure of DNA emerged. And these mutations, we know, affect the way the genes are expressed. Now, we care about the genes and the structure of the DNA, but in the end, we really care about the 3D parts of these molecules. We really need to know the 3D structure of the DNA. We really need to know the 3D structure of the proteins. If we know the 3D structure of the proteins, then we understand their functions. It's like a wheel having its role, the perfect shape for the function. Now, mutations within any of these genes will lead to abnormal 3D structures of these proteins, and those abnormal 3D structures lead to abnormal functions. Abnormal functions determine disorders. So starting from that point of view, we can understand how a disease is caused from the DNA. Mutations lead to the diseases. Now, that's simple because we have those 20,000 genes, and mutations in those genes lead directly to diseases. But then we have the non-coding DNA, in which we do not quite understand how these mutations affect the risk for a disease. Now, it's for the first time, this is the thing, the title is the answer AI gave me when I asked it, what's the role of AI in genetics and biology? And it's for the first time when biology is not interpreted anymore just by biological intelligence. That's what it's. So where can it help? Well, we have a lot of data, 20 years of gathering many information. We know we have around 6 billion nucleotides, letters inside of our DNA. We know mutations are not something which is rare. It's actually something which is really often and common in each of us. Each of any individuals has around 3 million mutations inside his own DNA. Of course, most of those mutations don't mean anything wrong. They won't become a disease, or determine a disease, but some of them might, or some of them might actually grow the risk for certain disorders in the carrying individuals. Where can AI help? Well, it can help us gather all this information and put them all together, and it already actually started. All this information from whole genome sequencing, from transcriptomics and epigenomics and genomics and proteomics, and all these databases are now taken into account by single softwares, which allow us to interpret the production of these disorders. So, for example, the protein structure, as I said, the 3D structure of the protein is one of the most important things in understanding the diseases, but the way that protein folds itself three-dimensionally is really hard to understand and was really a challenge for scientists for half of a century. In 1962, actually, there was the first Nobel Prize won for discovering the first protein structure, 3D protein structure, which was myoglobin. And funny enough, it was at the same time, in the same year, when Watson and Crick won their Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of the DNA, of the double helix. Until then, or since then, actually, around 150,000 types of proteins have been discovered in their three-dimensional form. That's a really low number, because we know they're in the numbers of hundreds of millions in nature. So through this software, which won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago, the scientists managed to discover the 3D folding of 250 million proteins, while the past 5 decades, only 150,000 had been found. So AI helps a lot in this manner, because understanding the 3D folding of proteins really gets us to understanding the way we can treat the diseases. Because it all starts actually from the genetic mistake, the genetic error. We know the error, and now we can treat the disease knowing the genetic mistake. Understanding the way that genetic mistake functions in the three-dimensional world of the molecules is what we need for getting to personalized therapies. And this is why where we're going with genetics. We can see that in oncology, where we already had targeted personalized medicine and therapies. Each patient has its own mutations. Each mutation has its own targeted therapy, and this is how we can treat patients with lower side effects, but much higher efficiency. So genetics really affects the entire life of each individual from the preconceptional age towards the end of life. Each aspect, each disease, each moment of the life is defined by the functioning of these molecules, of the DNA molecule, of these genes. Some of them work temporarily, some of them work permanently, and we need to know how they function and how they are affected by the environment. That 98.5% of the DNA, which is non-coding, is actually the interface which allows us to survive in the environment we're in, and also which affects us because of the environment of it we're in. So knowing how to manage this non-coding DNA and the mutations within it is actually the key for understanding the treatment for the diseases. Now, we're going from a classical model, actually, where we were used to form hypotheses, and then we used to go for them and research them and so on. And now we have these AI models in which we have these huge data sets which are fastly interpreted and patterns found. And we can learn from them, and then we can go towards finding out new biological functions. So it's a vice versa way. We don't go from a biological function and finding out what it's driven by. We see a pattern, and from there we get to the biological pattern. That's really interesting because we weren't able to do that before AI. So there are limits, of course. AI is in the end a software. It's a growing and emerging and learning software, but in the end, it needs humankind for its development, and it needs learning from us. And because genetics and the biology is not just a stationary thing, it's a complex a world in which many patterns emerge. We need to have the human influence and human experience for understanding all these results we get from AI. The final thing is where we can see now the influence of AI in genetics, in medical genetics, and in genomics. And there are three clearly developed fields in which we see that on a daily basis in clinical genetics. The first one is in rare diseases and in diagnosing rare disorders. Rare diseases have been not that well known before the 90s and 2000 and the Human Genome Project, because we couldn't see all the genes and didn't know all of the genes. But now we know there are more than 10,000 of them. And out of these 10,000 rare disorders, many of them have symptoms which are in common. There are many clinical elements which can be found in different disorders. So diagnosing clearly, pointing out the diagnosis for a certain disorder might be really difficult when it comes to genetic testing. This is why AI helps a lot. For example, the new studies state that AI led to to a better diagnostical outcome for rare diseases from a couple of years to less than half a year. So this is really fast, because in these rare disorders, we really need the most important thing is a fast and early diagnosis, because treatment will come and then comorbidities will be left out of the development. The second field where we can find clearly the importance of AI is the common risk disease of assessment. We know we have a genetic risk for the common disorders, a susceptibility which makes us prevalent or makes us adaptable for certain therapies. Because since we know we have a susceptibility or a high risk for a disease, we know there are risk factors around it which will transform it into a manifesting disorders. We know the risk factors through genetic testing. We know how to avoid getting the disease. But if we don't know how to assess the risk, because there are so many genes involved in these common disorders, they're called polygenic multifactorial disorders, so many genes involved, we need to assess the level of risk for each of them. And this is where AI comes into play, and in assessment, the risk for the disease. And then the final thing is, of course, coming from assessing these risks, is getting to the targeted personalized therapies, which emerge from knowing the exact mutation and gene for each of the patient we talk about. The last thing, and this is the best of them, because we're not talking about therapies anymore, we're talking about genetic prevention. Knowing these risks and understanding the whole complexity of these factors will lead us not to need to treat disorders, but just to know how to prevent them, since we know the risk for these diseases. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Radu Ioan Mursu. I tend to take all these things from the medical science very personally for some reason. I feel that I'm very personally and directly concerned by fascinating, intellectual, specialized, highly specialized sometimes discussions like this one. Thank you very much. It also makes me, how shall I say, nostalgic to think that I've known your parents for a lifetime, and I somehow anticipated your presentation. So thank you. We stay in the field of medical sciences, and we turn to Professor Mihaela Bustuchine-Blaicu, who is a professor of neuroscience, among others at the legendary Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris, which is, as humanists should know, and I'm sure they know, is the hospital that every humanist in the world knows about, because it was one of the foci of the work by Michel Foucault in the definition of modern institutions. And you cannot understand whatever Foucault was saying, mostly historically wrong, by the way, but fantastically interesting and fertile philosophically, when he is talking about the naissance de la clinique, or all these things which centered around Pitié-Salpêtrière, which you can get from the name of the hospital, is a combination of an asylum for the poor, usually or originally poor women in the 17th century, and the pre-existing powder factory in the area. So it is a kind of explosive combination in the beginnings of the institutionalization of illness, which is, from the point of view of the history of social sciences, a decisive moment in the definition of madness as a pathology in the modern way we understand it ever since in the 17th century, around 1656, 1657, with the creation of what was called l'Hôpital Général. I mentioned all this for people who are fans or at least readers of Foucault, to get you a sense of how we get there. But now we deal with the professor of neuroscience, and not, as some people in our generation think, with the fantastically popular folk singer of another time. You have.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I want to give this presentation not in French, not in English, but in my natal, beautiful language. Despre inteligența artificială s-a vorbit ieri și s-a spus că sunt perioade foarte multe și este o perioadă optimistă. Așa a început ieri o prezentare. Și, într-adevăr, în anii 1950-1957, colegiul de la Dortmund s-a gândit că foarte probabil inteligența artificială va fi viitorul lumii. Și cred că aveau dreptate, nu cred, sunt sigură că au avut dreptate. Astăzi o să vă vorbesc despre, titlul era Inteligența artificială în sănătate în general, de fapt în neurologie. M-am gândit foarte bine, nu pot să spun într-un sfert de oră care sunt ideile în general și care va fi viitorul acestei medicine ajutată de inteligența artificială. Ne ajută cu cele mai multe lucruri și le vedeți pe diapozitiv, pentru pacient, pentru medic, mai ales pentru cercetare și, bineînțeles, pentru viitor, pentru că dacă cercetăm și dacă facem o medicină modernă, rezultatele vor fi excelente. Inteligența artificială este un lucru de care toată lumea vorbește. La Sala Palatului la Paris, în decembrie anul trecut, am făcut o prezentare pentru neurologi, era un congres internațional, și mi-am dat seama că neurologii în general, colegii mei, au idei destul de vagi despre inteligența artificială, pentru că nimeni nu și-a dat un pic interesul să vadă în profunzime, ca și inginerii, ce înseamnă langaj, ce înseamnă inteligența artificială generativă, ca să înțeleagă efectiv ce se întâmplă cu neuronii și ce trebuie să studiem. În fine, sper că această critică o este adevărată și că în viitor, la facultate, asta este primul meu mesaj, la facultate trebuie să se introducă efectiv o specialitate în care studenții să învețe inteligența artificială și mai ales utilizarea ei în domeniul medicinei. Despre ce vorbim în medicină când utilizăm inteligența? Ne ajută să descoperim droguri, ne ajută să personalizăm medicina, ne ajută în imagerie și, bineînțeles, în genetică. Colegul meu a vorbit tot imediat înainte. Și să construim un pacient virtual. O să vă explic imediat despre ce este vorba. Deci toate domeniile sunt foarte interesate de această dezvoltare a inteligenței artificiale și bineînțeles că acest lucru nu se poate realiza dacă vorbim numai între noi, între medici, și nu avem o colaborare efectiv fructuoasă cu inginerii, cu științificii, cu oameni de știință, cu cei care pot să ne ajute, pentru că fiecare are limbajul lui și nu putem să punem datele împreună dacă nu avem competențe în acest domeniu. De ce în neurologie? Pentru că e simplu, sunt neurolog și nu pot să-mi permit să vorbesc despre cardiologie. Văd în sală deja cardiologi pe care îi salut. Deci, neurologie, dar într-un sfert de oră ce aș putea să spun despre neurologie? Pentru că neurologia este așa de vastă încât inteligența artificială a pătruns peste tot, pătrunde peste tot, dar pătrunde mai mult în anumite domenii, bineînțeles în viitor va pătrunde în toate, însă dau exemplu în scleroza multiplă. Cercetările nu sunt, inteligența n-a pătruns foarte, foarte, foarte tare, în genetică da, și vă dau exemplu în anii 2012, când lucram la Institutul de Moal și de Cerveau cu echipa de genetică, am descoperit o genă în 2012, dar atunci lucram cu mijloace foarte, foarte, foarte înapoiate, pot să spun acum, pentru că apariția genomului White a schimbat totul în domeniul genetic. În epilepsie, o să vorbim imediat, în Parkinson s-a introdus inteligența artificială, bineînțeles, pentru că toate sistemele, toate gadgeturile, de fapt nu sunt gadgeturi, toate sistemele care sunt actual prezente, în toate aceste lucruri se utilizează inteligența artificială. Trebuie să măsurăm pașii, trebuie să măsurăm tremurul, trebuie să măsurăm anumiți parametri, deci trebuie și avem nevoie de inteligență artificială. În accidente vasculare va avea o influență importantă, pentru că la ora actuală utilizăm tromboliză, dar inteligența ne va ajuta pentru descoperirea a noi medicamente sau descoperirea a noi tehnici pe care le putem utiliza. Și în sfârșit, despre epilepsie. De ce vă vorbesc despre epilepsie? Pentru că este domeniul în care m-am preocupat mult și în care este pasiunea mea. Nu vreau să vă fac o lecție despre epilepsie. Vreau să înțelegeți de ce ne ajutăm de inteligența artificială, în ce domeniu. Clasica electroencefalogramă este important și rămâne încă la modă. Dar lucrurile nu se mai petrec cu o mică hârtie pe care înregistram un traseu. Acum putem să înregistrăm traseul electroencefalografic cu aparate pe care pacientul le poartă și în care electroencefalograma este înregistrată zi și noapte la domiciliu și peste tot. Iar când pacientul vine la noi, putem să vedem efectiv dacă o criză a avut loc în timpul somnului sau în timpul zilei, etc. O să revin mai pe larg, despre neuroimagerie, inteligența este, după mine, numărul 1 în neurologie și o să vă explic imediat de ce. În diagnostic și clasificare, da, da și nu, încă sunt progrese de făcut, iar în utilizarea răspunsului la medicamente, de asemenea, avem nevoie încă de progrese. În privința studiilor noilor medicamente, și acest lucru este valabil nu numai pentru epilepsie, în medicină în general, se vor face mari progrese în descoperirea medicamentelor, mai ales nu o să testăm toate drogurile toate medicamentele, un test pentru apariția unui nou medicament poate să dureze 10 ani, 15 ani, 12 ani. Deci acest timp se va micșora și vom avea efectiv o privire mult mai științifică în ceea ce vrem să căutăm și să demonstrăm. Și, nu în ultimul rând, monitorizarea pacientului este importantă și nu numai în neurologie și pentru epilepsie, în general, în cardiologie, bineînțeles, și în toate multe alte domenii respective. Pentru că v-am vorbit de predicție și despre machine learning, este important, de exemplu, în electroencefalogramă, să nu mai folosim numai electroencefalograma convențională, să folosim deja la pitié de 35 de ani de când sunt acolo, implantarea de electrozi se practică, însă acum performanțele tehnice sunt mult mai importante și implantarea electrozilor sub scalp este o metodă un pic mai nouă, dar care aduce date foarte importante. În ceea ce privește electroencefalograma, vedeți, nu mai este vorba de un singur foaie epileptic, nici gând. Vorbeam acum 15 ani, trebuie să faci electroencefalogramă și știi că din lobul temporal pleacă focarul epileptic. Nu mai este valabil. Și inteligența ne-a ajutat și ne ajută pentru că acum urmărim rețelele, asta este și scopul final, să urmărim rețelele care se formează la un pacient care suferă de epilepsie. Și pentru acest lucru, explorările sunt multiple. Avem nevoie de PET, avem nevoie de MRI, de SPECT, de genetică, bineînțeles, de un examen neurofiziologic și, bineînțeles, putem să delimităm mai bine această zonă epileptică pe care, mai departe, chirurgia pentru anumite cazuri de epilepsie poate să aibă un beneficiu important. Pentru imagerie este efectiv noua nu descoperire, este un lucru extraordinar pentru un neurolog, pentru că pacientul vine cu IRM și spune este normal, examenul este normal. De fapt, ce vede ochiul pe imagerie, inteligența artificială poate să vadă lucruri care nu se văd și ochiul uman nu le vede. Aici este exemplu, de exemplu, la o distrofie, o displazie, poate fi văzută de inteligență, cu ajutorul inteligenței și trece nevăzută de către om. Este un lucru foarte important pentru că pacientul are o leziune, această leziune există și trebuie, bineînțeles, să avem o atitudine un pic mai agresivă, pentru că dacă nu înlăturăm cauza care a provocat epilepsia, atunci pacientul va continua să facă crize. Deci este efectiv un mare progres. Iar în ultimii ani, în afară de ce am menționat, toate aceste big data se pun împreună și lucrul important este să construim gemeni, să construim acest lucru ca un pacient virtual pe care să înțelegem dacă vrem să facem o intervenție chirurgicală sau nu, bineînțeles, caz pe caz. Din punct de vedere clinic, este bine să întrebăm pe Alexa sau nu știu unde sunt aici toate nu știu cum se cheamă în țară, Alexa, am epilepsie sau nu? sau să fac imediat diagnosticul cu ajutorul informatic, cu ajutorul inteligenței artificiale. Da și nu, pentru că sunt anumite elemente care contează atunci când punem și întrebăm, am un diagnostic respectiv sau nu. Pot să fie răspunsuri pozitive, dar pot să fie răspunsuri într-adevăr negative. De ce? Pentru că clinicianul are nevoie nu numai de date din punct de vedere anamneză, are nevoie de multe date care să contribuie la realizarea unui diagnostic corect. Și aici vedeți în imagine câte lucruri ne trebuie ca să stabilim un adevărat diagnostic. Bineînțeles că cu ajutorul inteligenței lucrurile sunt mult mai clare și, așa cum am spus, decizia finală este aceea a neurologului. În domeniul medical, în domeniul terapeuticii, au apărut, am făcut încercări să punem, de exemplu, care este medicamentul cel mai indicat pentru pacientul X. Dacă nu pui datele foarte clare și istoricul și nu îi dai informații corecte, bineînțeles că îți va alege 3-4 medicamente care probabil au totuși interferențe cu celelalte medicamente pe care pacientul le ia și care nu le-a băgat în date. Deci, din nou, pot să fie răspunsuri destul de negative. Nu fac deloc o pledorie contra inteligenței artificiale, nici gând. Sunt prima care crede și îmi pare rău că am o vârstă și nu o să mai pot să particip foarte mult timp la progresele care se înregistrează acum, dar lucrul nostru este, munca neurologului este mult facilitată cu ajutorul tuturor informațiilor care sunt actuale la noi. Care sunt obstacolele? Obstacolele sunt multe și chiar dacă în Occident se pare că suntem mai avansați, nu cred că este chiar adevărat, pentru că, în primul rând, nu se cunoaște cum ar trebui să se cunoască de către medici care sunt interesele inteligenței artificiale, este totul foarte superficial. Nu avem încă ghiduri care să ne ajute, nu avem interpretări și nu am ajuns să punem date care să fie date din toată lumea pentru a stabili, de exemplu, formele rare de epilepsie din punct de vedere genetic și etc. Deci, multe, acum nu vreau să intru în detalii, dar halucinațiile inteligenței artificiale există și mi-mi place foarte mult termenul. Sunt articole întregi despre acest lucru, deci trebuie să ne ferim de acest lucru negativ și să întrebăm și să cerem avizul, bineînțeles, al inginerilor. Pentru facilități, nu e bine nu mai pot să vă spun de ce, sunt într-adevăr multe avantaje și lucrul nu se termină cu o listă foarte lungă, dar bineînțeles că toate datele trebuie bine calculate și insist la nivel internațional și nu național, pentru că nu au nicio valoare dacă sunt datele numai la nivel național. Și bineînțeles că trebuie să ținem cont de toate informațiile și toate noutățile care există, pentru că în epilepsie și în general în medicină, la ora actuală, sunt biomarcării care sunt la modă și care ne vor schimba, bineînțeles, viața și mai ales viața pacienților. Iar în ceea ce privește protecția datelor este iar un punct de întrebare. Protecția generală a datelor, s-a vorbit deja ieri și astăzi despre aceste legi care există. Pacienții încă au o frică și medicii încă sunt destul de friloși pentru păstrarea acestei identități și acestui secret medical. Bineînțeles că lucrurile sunt în evoluție și se vor face foarte multe progrese. Nu putem să lucrăm singuri. Nu putem să avansăm singuri în medicină dacă nu avem alături de noi tot ce vedeți, toate companiile industriale și toate datele care sunt deja pe toate, pe toate ce am spus, toate companiile și industriile respective. Deci, este un cerc, nu cerc vicios, cerc necesar de colaborare intensă cu toată lumea și de punerea împreună a tot ce știm ca să avansăm. Am trecut cele 5 puncte care le-am considerat importante pentru viitor și pentru anul acesta. Bineînțeles că nu pot să închei această prezentare fără un bemol, și anume, inteligența artificială ne ajută, ne va ajuta, este viitorul și bineînțeles că trebuie să păstrăm relațiile interumane și trebuie să păstrăm totuși judecata clinicianului care, după tot ce s-a pus în valoare, trebuie să facă o selecție, pentru că medicina, și cu asta închei, medicina rămâne o artă. Medicina rămâne o artă și inteligența artificială o să ne transforme și a început deja să ne transforme practica de toate zilele. Mulțumesc!
Eu mulțumesc foarte mult. Thank you very much. We make a soft transition with the best possible voice that we remember from in our generation, we remember very vividly, to a kind of bilingual or maybe polyglot version of our conference, which is going to include more Romanian contributions in the future. One thing I would like to say, my first lived experience in a science fiction universe happened at the epilepsy hospital in Braunschweig, Germany, about 30 years ago, where I could see, as the wife of a dear close colleague, a historian, was a medical doctor at the local center. I could see the most, I thought I was just stepping into kind of a Space Odyssey 2001 or something, but in a good way, in a place of saturated with the high technology of 30 years ago. They kept they kept transforming this technology over time. And yes, hospitals, unfortunately, when you are a patient, you do not concentrate really on that to appreciate the technological progress. You wait for something more than that. But that was an instance of extraordinary contact with this kind of high-level technology, with all the good and bad consequences. Now, we closed the first session this morning with a presentation by Petre Roman on the impact of the AI avalanche on society and human behavior. I keep repeating this story. When I first met Petre, he was the Prime Minister of Romania, and I was the Director General and the Minister of Education. He had just signed a totally stupid decision which had been handed to him by the minister, my mentor, Mihai Șora. He trusted the philosopher Mihai Șora, as I did, only Mihai Șora submitted a proposal which was totally counterproductive. I told him frontally, this was the first time I was seeing him, that this had been a stupid thing to do. He paused for a while and he said, let's correct it immediately. So I said, well, if this guy is not offended by somebody who comes up and says that he has just done a stupid thing, there may be some potential there. So he is, of course, himself a scholar, and besides being a former politician and prime minister, and in this capacity, he is coming to join us.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Wonderful. Ăsta, așa? Sau înapoi? Ăsta? Și înapoi? Ok. Okay. Thank you for the nice words. The title, The Impact of AI Avalanche on Society and Human Behavior, is just the framework. The content is the complex connections between AI performance and human reality. One of the most common questions today is, can AI outperform humans? I start by saying something obvious, that the fabric of our daily life appears to be the artificial intelligence. The CEO and owner of NVIDIA, Păun, aggressively supporting his interest, said that he speaks about the AI-oriented future. I disagree from the start, saying, no, the future is still humanity. But I've seen that some scientists in the field say these days that AI should be considered as natural, like water or sun, not just a human innovation. This is something really shocking, to consider AI as natural. 2 weeks ago, Palantir, is the largest provider of data analytics tools for mass surveillance for the Pentagon, but also Palantir is holding contracts with the defense ministries of Spain and the United Kingdom. Palantir produced a specific document. In its 22 points, the document downplays the value of democracy, calls for the use of AI as a weapon of war, and defends social control, or what is known today as techno-fascism. This is something, I think, very worrisome. So, starting from this, there are 2 short parts. One is humans versus AI, and the second would be, and these afterwards, AI versus humans. Well, we humans use a variety of skills: communication, empathy, problem solving, teamwork on one hand, or critical and strategic thinking on the other. And combining them intelligently, in the development of them, beyond individual intelligence, there is also collective intelligence. As a result, we humans, we pursue our goals rationally and achieve that level of reliability that we prescribed as the normal way of adapting and producing the expected results. Such an intuitive as well as expertise capacity doesn't exist in the realm of artificial intelligence. That's one observation. I quote Joseph Sifakis, recipient of the Turing Award, one of the, if not the most important award in the field of artificial intelligence, saying there is a considerable gap between the conversational AI systems we have today and autonomous systems capable of replacing human operators in complex organization. So, an algorithm, basically, an algorithm which is, of course, the core of the artificial intelligence, is just statistical relationships. Using a huge amount of data, and that is the enormous advantage. That is the most important advantage. We, as humans, we cannot treat so many data. They are fed with huge amounts of data. And they, using these statistical relationships, they highlight evolutionary trends in social, natural, biological systems, every kind of scientists through this statistical processing of a vast volume of data. So these are average trends, average. The algorithm right now can promote the trends they found. And some of those trends may be new, meaning discovered by themselves through the process of emergence. But the algorithm cannot bring anything fundamentally new. Man can always correct a certain course of things, especially from a moral perspective, which, of course, AI does not perceive. Very simple example. I don't know if you see this image. It's a very simple example. Simple, and it's like the science works. It's an essentialization, my example here. What you see is very simple. You see the levels of a river, doesn't matter where it's in Italy, on a certain period of time. And though they are simply data, in the upper diagram, in the upper part, you see those data distributed from a model of random. You know, there are tools being capable to, you have a data and they display a randomness of them. That is, we call the ludic system. In the middle is the reality, the water system, the data which were actually registered. And we see a trend. But the third one is where the AI came to treat this data. And the result is quite funny. They netted. You have now a very concentrated average, almost not without any kind of variability, very slow variability. But the only registered data, which is because of several contingencies, several complex situations of the moment, that data, which is there on the right up, is for the AI outside. He cannot grasp the critical points. which are, by the way, from our perspective, the most important, because the critical points are the extreme, for instance, events, floods, heat waves, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes. So he was able to express what is the average, which is very useful, but not the critical point. As I said, is a very simple example. AI senses the difference between good and evil. I was very impressed in the presentation of my friend Gheorghe Ștefan, when he said that we have to educate everybody, including the AIs, to understand the difference between good and evil. AI senses the difference between good and evil exclusively from the statistical perspective, but does not feel any difference between them. It does not take the side of good in itself, but only as a statistical result. AI is intrinsically sycophantic, trying to please the provider, because that is how its learning was created. AI-based machines can indeed correct our errors based on the use of repetitive statistical rules, which have become a dominant feature of our time. The statistical significance of the result can increase even to the level of discovery by using AI, but it's not AI that makes the discovery. Now, I think one statement I propose here is important from my point of view. So as a conclusion, outside from this point, from this part, outside the data, as large as they could be and actually are, which are fed in it, in AI, AI is dangerously uninformed outside this data. We can agree about that. He is uninformed and dangerously uninformed because he can treat whatever it is, poisons, explosives, whatever, like just data. AI is not competent working in a non-statistical information environment. I just mentioned the problem of criticality. So to conclude this part, they are AI clearly not producing fundamental knowledge, laws of physics or in other domains, that is, laws that explain and describe states of nature and their dynamics. How then can AI match human creativity while unable to produce fundamental knowledge? Is my question. Secondly, now, AI versus humans. Here we have really a problem, the so-called black box characteristic, which was already mentioned in 1950 by Turing. At the very beginning of the computation era, he was pointing to that. They are non-explainable, as Alan Turing said. From this, follows the inadequate explanatory power related to our weak capacity to simulate how the AI systems actually work, because we don't know. Actually, they use huge amounts of data. We have little data about their functioning. There are probably in this process other things, I presume, other things we don't even know, as again, Gheorghe Ștefan mentioned, that we don't know, but who can have a very big impact. Now, a very recent example is Claude Mythos. This is the new model of Anthropic. It shows that AI can not only write software code more easily and with greater complexity than any currently available model, but as a byproduct of this capability, it can identify vulnerabilities in almost all the most popular software systems in the world. They are unknown vulnerabilities, but Mythos can trace them. As a result, whoever uses Mythos, a hacker, well, he can do a lot of very, very nasty, dangerous things. This is a very worrisome aspect in the use of AIs. You can imagine that now there is only Mythos, and Anthropic decided to share this code only with the institutional entities in order to avoid the diffusion of this model in very, let's say, dangerous hands. But tomorrow, another kind of Mythos could appear, and we are facing the same big danger. And I'm coming with a conclusion about that. Another aspect, I think, it's also pointing to our vulnerabilities facing AI, is that more and more humans have this habit of delegating intellectual work to machines. And forcefully, this is accompanied by two, I would say, devastating effects. One, the erosion of critical thinking skills. And second, the loss of the sense of responsibility. And this has been proved scientifically by researchers in MIT who found far less brain activity for people using extensively AI than those who don't. That is already a fact determined scientifically. Also, AI is producing a homogenization of thought, which is conducive to a loss of creativity. I mean, AI versus humanity versus humans is showing how damaging it can be in very practical terms, in the common life. Loss of sense of responsibility, loss of critical thinking, and loss of creativity. What can be worse than that? Now, as a conclusion, we humans need and seek meaning, purpose, and significance in the world. And of course, we are confronted with risks and uncertainties. A famous English philosopher Roger Scruton expressed an improbability, however possible it might be, involves a failure of imagination gap. I would say that the imaginative gap between humans and AI is not just big, it's of an essential nature. Yesterday, presentations made me think that a very simple, I noted, humans display often, we know, fury and madness, craziness. AI cannot display fury, but madness or craziness. Probably yes. We can define human derangement. So we need to define AI derangement, possible derangement. We want not just technology in the online world. We want a moral attitude. Our future history should not be based on AI. Thank you. Petre Roman, thank you very much. To add another language to our mix of languages, I should use his mother tongue, literally. Muchas gracias, Pedro. Yes, I think this closes the circle I was opening in my opening remarks when I was talking about the delegation of everything human to machines, meaning AI, and seeing in this a delegation which has become increasingly irresponsible and suicidal, this creation of the post-human noosphere, using Teilhard de Chardin's term, and using the dangers that are associated with this absolute delegation of everything used to characterize the highest skills and qualities and capacities of the human mind to something else. We are now coming to the close of the most formal part of our event. I suggest, yes, it's true that, I'm sorry, yeah, in this version of the program that we circulated, I unfortunately didn't have the final version, and in fact, the last formal presentation is by another illustrious Romanian, trained as an engineer, but who, rather than spending his entire life on Earth, he took a break from our planet at some point as a cosmonaut and went up to the stars. He came back, Dumitru Prunariu, and I'm very proud, actually, and very happy to meet him. I'm sorry that in the printed version that I have, this was not reflected.
The last I am.
Yeah. Sorry. Please.
So I have my presentation here, I think. Fost trimis am crezut că a fost trimisă și s-a primit, dacă nu este la mine. Hai să. Da, oricum, numai să nu mi după aia sticul aici. Îi dau câte o săgeată în acesta. Ok, merge așa. Okay. Thank you very much. It's true that sometimes people are lost in the space, but I don't want to be lost on the earth. So my presentation, it's about artificial intelligence and space activities. And the name is Beyond the Human, Without Losing Humanity. Artificial intelligence and the future of civilization in the cosmos. Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak today about artificial intelligence, we attempt to look at it either without boundless enthusiasm or with fear. For some, AI is the promise of more efficient, more intelligent, better organized world. For others, it marks the beginning of an age in which humanity risks losing control over its own creation. I would like to propose a different perspective. Not first and foremost a technical one, not a strictly philosophical one, but a human one, born of an experience that few people have had the privilege to live, that of leaving the earth, looking at it from outside, and understanding, even if only for a few days, how fragile the human being is, and how great his destiny may be. Okay. I had the chance to see the Earth from space. When you look at the planet from orbit, you do not see borders, conflicts, or ideologies. You see a living, luminous, vulnerable world. You see a thin atmosphere protecting everything we love, everything we build, everything we are. And you understand that humanity, in all its intellectual and moral greatness, is at the same time an extraordinary and extremely fragile form of life. In space, this fragility becomes immediately evident. There, nothing can be taken for granted. Air must be produced or conserved. Water must be carefully managed. Energy must be calculated. Every system must be monitored. Every error might have disproportionate consequences. Human beings are no longer the comfortable masters of their environment. They become dependent on knowledge, discipline, technology, and cooperation. That is why, if we truly want to understand the meaning of the expression AI beyond humanity, I believe we must begin with a simple question. What does beyond the humanity actually means? Does it mean replacing the human being? Does it mean surpassing him? Does it mean making him unnecessary? I do not think so. I believe the deeper meaning of this expression is different. How can we transcend the biological limits of the human being without losing what is essential human within us? This is, in my view, the question of the century. For the first time in the history of civilization, humanity is creating a form of intelligence capable of processing, comparing, learning, anticipating, and assisting decisions at a speed and at a scale inaccessible to the individual human mind. At the same time, humanity is preparing to return to the moon, to build more complex orbital infrastructures, to send human beings to Mars, and perhaps one day to establish a lasting presence beyond Earth. These two processes are not separate, they converge. The cosmic exploration of the future will not be achieved only with more powerful rockets and more advanced capsules. It will depend fundamentally on artificial intelligence. AI will not merely be an auxiliary tool. Very probably, it will become a second invisible crew on human missions. In the future, every human crew will fly in one form or another together with a digital crew. This digital crew will monitor complex systems in real time. It will anticipate failures before they become critical. It will optimize resources. It will assist medical diagnosis. It will reduce the cognitive burden on astronauts and will support navigation. It will simulate scenarios and propose solutions when reaction time is extremely short. But the role of AI does not end there. Before human beings reach the moon or Mars for long duration stays, habitats, energy systems, extraction and recycling processes, maintenance infrastructures, and perhaps even basic forms of local production will have to be prepared. Many of these will be designed, coordinated, or administrated by autonomous or semi-autonomous intelligence systems. In other words, AI will do more than help humanity explore. It will transform the hostile environments into operable environments. It will translate the unknown into a space of possibility. And here we encounter the fascinating paradox of our age. The farther we want to go into the cosmos, the greater our need for non-biological intelligence becomes. Yet, the more capable this intelligence becomes, the more important it is to define clearly what must remain exclusively human. This is not only a technological question, it is a question of civilization. For the human being, is not defined only by the capacity to calculate. If that were the case, we would already have been replaced. The human being is defined by consciousness, by meaning, by the assumption of responsibility, by the ability to judge not only what is efficient, but also what is right. Courage is not an algorithm. Dignity is not a function. Moral responsibility is not an automated process. A machine may recommend an optimal solution in a given context, but it cannot live through the moral consequences of the decision. It cannot carry the human burden of choice. It cannot replace the moment in which a human being, confronted with uncertainty, decides not only what is possible, but also what is legitimate. That is why I believe the future does not belong to an artificial intelligence that eliminates the human being, but to an alliance between the human intelligence and artificial intelligence, in which the human being remains the bearer of meaning and the guarantor of values. This distinction is essential, especially for the leaders of today's world. Because the issue is not only what AI can do, the issue is for what purpose it will be used, who will control it, and according to what rules it will function. From space, the Earth appears united. From Earth, however, we know how fragmented our world is. We know that every major discovery can serve cooperation or confrontation. We know that every advanced technology can be used for progress or for domination. We know that outer space, which we once dreamed of as a horizon for all humanity, it's increasingly becoming a field of strategic competition. In this context, AI introduces a new level of power. Those who control data, algorithms, infrastructures, and standards can influence not only economies and societies, but also the future architectures of human presence in space. This is why it is not enough to admire technological performance. We must also build a governance of responsibility. We need international rules, transparency, ethical standards, and mechanisms of trust. We need genuine dialogue among engineers, philosophers, physicians, jurists, diplomats, military experts, educators, and political leaders. We need the development of AI not to be left exclusively to the logic of speed, commercial competition, or immediate strategic advantage. Because when a civilization develops enormous means without a comparable moral maturity, it does not truly advance. It merely amplifies its risks. There is another risk as well, more subtle, but perhaps just as important. the risk of becoming dependent on our own systems to the point of losing essential human abilities. If AI remembers, decides, plans, anticipates, and corrects in our place, what happens to human discernment? What happens in the inner training of responsibility? What happens to the capacity to face the unknown without the permanent prosthesis of an algorithm? Here, the experience of spaceflight offers important lessons. In extreme conditions, technology is indispensable, but it's not sufficient. At the limit, what matters decisively is human quality. Calm, discipline, lucidity, solidarity, the capacity to cooperate and to give meaning to a difficult situation. In other words, the more hostile the environment, the more visible the human core of resilience becomes. Precisely for this reason, I believe that the theme beyond humanity must be understood not as a surpassing of the human being in the sense of abandoning him, but as a surpassing of his limited conditions through a technology that guides morally and strategically. AI can extend our vision, our memory, our analytical power, and our ability to operate in impossible environments. But it must not replace precisely what justifies our presence in the universe: consciousness, questioning, meaning, and responsibility. Ultimately, space exploration is not only about reaching a place. It is about understanding who we are, what we get there. If we build bases on the moon, if we reach Mars, if we transform humanity into multiplanetary civilization, we'll not do so only with engines, materials, and software. We'll do it with a certain idea of the human being, with a certain idea of cooperation, with a certain idea of dignity and destiny. And here perhaps lies the most important message I would like to convey. The future does not have to be post-human. The future can be more profoundly human, precisely because it will be assisted by an artificial intelligence capable of freeing us from some of our limitations without dispossessing us of our moral identity. Before the cosmos, the human being remains small. Before his own creations, the human being risks becoming uncertain. But between these two forms of vertigo, there is a path. The path of civilization that uses artificial intelligence not to abdicate its humanity, but to project its future more responsible, more lucid, and in greater solidarity. Beyond the human must not mean without the human. Beyond the human may mean, on the contrary, the human being carried further by the best of what he creates within himself. And if we succeed in this, then AI will not be the end of the human age. It will be the beginning of the new stage of humanity. Thank you.
Dumitru Prunariu, thank you very much. In those days of old, when science was present in society in many ways in Romania and in other countries in the area, our connection to science did not exclude our interest in the imagination, and probably we have here in the room Alexandru Mironov, who was a crusader for science fiction in those days. We owe him a lot in terms of our capacity of dreaming about other spaces, other planets, other worlds. For most of us, this remained a dream. For Dumitru Prunariu, this became a reality. He was the only one of us educated on exactly the same grounds, in admiration for science, in admiration for the future, in admiration for humanity, which at the time, we shouldn't forget it, science, which in English is is a reductionist term. It doesn't think it first addresses the idea of hard science. In other languages, including French, Romanian, which cooperated, Wissenschaft in German, and so forth, it is all-encompassing. And that is the legacy of those times. But again, he is the only one who made it up there and back, I have to say. And there is one other thing that I would add before we break. He really had to take it seriously because he had to deal with all that in Russian. When he was a member of a Soyuz flight, obviously he had to really master all the subtleties of that language in order to function with the other team and come back. Otherwise, it would have remained one of those other flights that were just one way. So thank you very much for this comprehensive. I completely share the vision. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we break, and I suggest that we return at 12:30 sharp, okay, to continue with our discussion, the last part. So break up to 12. which will forget to think. How you will aid them? How they will survive? That's the question that the humanity has to face nowadays, because they will remain only 2% of people thinking with the famous dubito ergo cogito, cogito ergo sum. If you don't have critical thinking from Descartes, you don't exist anymore. And when you will have personal agents, you know, the first personal agent, we didn't call it AI at that time, was the GPS, the navigation. Do you know how many people are listening blindly, but blindly to a GPS? 99%, not 98, 99%. And 4 months ago, a guy with a Citroen C4 got into the channel in Strasbourg because the GPS told him to go there. In the next time, the AI agent will teach him how to kiss a girl, how to erase his bum when he will go to the toilet. Everything. Don't laugh, because this is the human danger, in fact. What we're gonna do with the agents? Because when you are looking to Microsoft, they are paying McKinsey nowadays to study how the co-pilot would take the world. And we are telling them, we don't want this world, but doesn't matter. The economy will push to this, and you have no the choice. You will adopt it. How with this, still keep in your mind dubito ergo cogito, because if not, we go for a society with 98% persons which have no more critical thinking. And then, if I'm saying this, Petre Roman will accuse me that I'm a technological fascist. No, I want to avoid this. I want to avoid this. How? And that's, I preach for the changing in the education. As Mihaela said, we need to teach to doctors how to use AI. We need to teach to everybody, not only doctors, how to think when you have your friend which knows everything. This will enhance us. This will enhance our capabilities if we keep the critical thinking. So that's a pledge for more critical thinking. Thank you.
Florin, thank you. I know I surprise you with my but I want to surprise one more for a short, very short answer. The huge evolution in AI, spectacular evolution. It is a base of incentives from economics, from society, or in the base of incentives from military point of view, security. That's a curiosity. If you you more professional answer to this,
you get a
surprising question.
No, I'm working nowadays as chief science officer for an industrial aerospace and defense group, and one of our subsidiary are the, let's say, the world leader in scoring and training for jet fighter pilots. Well, we are developing an AI-based explainable artificial intelligence to assist the pilot to better go and purchase a target. Because when you engage a target, you are flying for 2-3 minutes on devices, on apparatus, and then you have the target in visual for, let's say, then less than 6 seconds.
It is a good thing.
The quality of the approaching of the target, it allows you to hit the target or to be hit by the target.
You eliminate the emotion.
Yeah,
That's
we are developing a virtual instructor to assist the pilot to better go to the target. And this is the first step in what we call man-machine teaming, because the second step is if the instructor is able to tell to a pilot how to better reach the target,
Well, this means that he could be the pilot for a drone. And by the way, simply when you hear that the Ukrainians are building 1.5 million drones per year, that's an abuse of language. They are building remote piloted aero models. The drones, which means UAV, which is an unmanned autonomous vehicle, they barely build several hundreds, because not all the drones are drones. They are just remote piloted, so very, very efficient. Take care, they have more than 100,000 guys. They have more than 50 regiments, military regiments of pilots of drones. So 100,000 pilots for remote. Definitely, it's a strong force. But to answer to your question,
You already answered, because what's the threat?
humankind it's reacting, and sometimes, the majority of the times, we are overreacting in case of direct threats on our self-existence. So that's, of course, so defense is pushing towards massive adoption of EA, because why? AI is better than us. Don't forget it. And in complex, but we are, and I have to promote again. So cross fingers. If you want more about qualificative AI, the intelligence which allows you to take decision based on weight criteria. So when you take a decision, you use criteria.
So the lack of
And weight of criteria. So we are developing this. Everybody is pushing us to renounce to a term sheet agreement that we signed with a sheikh from a Regent family in Sarjak for 15 million in 30% of our company here with Ingrid. And everybody is stopping us. And the guy who's stopping us the most is the Amiral Vandier, which is NATO Supreme Allied Commander transformation. Because says, no, it's too linked to our sovereignty to accept money from Emirates.
Thank you very much. But I'm sorry, it was a trap, intellectual trap, because everybody speak about to lose the emotion with the AI, but you show us some cases when you lose the emotion, it is a good thing for people. It is great
To overreact.
but it is not impossible.
It is pushing you out of your comfort zone.
Thank you. Of course, it is an evolution. Without emotion, you could be better, but without emotion, our life could be sad. And in this case, I invite the Mr. Varjan Vosganian, who is a very good writer. Okay, of course, it is Mr. Minister, but for me, it is a very good writer. I invite you to speak about AI and emotion, because
This is my reaction, Sorin. Of course, the machine knows. Yeah, the piano player. The machine AI knows everything I know, but doesn't know what I think. Doesn't know what I feel. So I want to add to this very interesting debate some words, a very short overview on the relation between AI and literature. Because in the recent years, we have a real challenge concerning the role and the effects of the AI on the literature. Literature, practically like all act of culture, is unicity and creativity. If you introduce the criteria of an algorithm between unicity and creativity, which is the result? The result is an author with intellectual rights or an anonymous author hidden by anonymity. It means that there is a challenge against the author himself, which is the destiny of the author in the world of AI, without unicity, without creativity, and following step by step the dictatorship of the algorithm. I have to confess that AI act differently on different spaces of literature. First of all, AI is more advanced on exegesis, on research, on the role of the statistics in interpreting the literature. I mean, which is the frequency of the words using in a masterpiece, which is, for example, the narrative structure of the masterpiece, which is the connection between reality and the fantasy and the fiction, and so on and so on. The academic world has a lot of troubles, wonders if the students create their works in the class using the AI or not. This is a very important challenge for them. So this is concerning the exegesis. In exegesis, the role of the AI, because AI collect information and because knows everything, is very useful. But now coming to the prose, for example. In prose, things are more difficult. For example, AI couldn't create a masterpiece like Finnegan's Wake of Joyce. Couldn't imagine new worlds enlightened by symbols. But in the prose, the impact of the AI is important, not in the poetry. The poetry remains the resistance against AI, especially the poems in rhymes. It's very difficult for AI to create rhymes. For example, if you ask to IT to create a poem like, I don't know, Marin Sorescu or Virgil Mazilescu, he could approximately do that. But if you ask him to create something like Îndulcire Stil Classic of Nikita Stănescu, AI will be wrong, because the rhyme used by AI goes to the 19th century, to Bolintineanu, to Alexandri, to the very old-fashioned. Using the rhymes, the poetry is very old-fashioned, very vintage. So why? Because AI use comparisons, input, algorithm, output. If you try to use metaphors, input is missing. If the input is missing, AI is not able to create outputs without inputs. So the metaphor is the best resistance against the intrusion of AI in literature, in poetry. But the main point is the following. The hardcore of the literature is a balance between ethics and aesthetics. And AI doesn't have the feeling of ethics and of aesthetics. AI can only make descriptions, can only make mixture, but not a balance between ethics and other aesthetics. And why? Because AI has chronology, but doesn't have axiology. AI don't make any difference between good and bad, only between error and truth. And AI can't provoke emotions. If AI can't provoke emotions, can't provoke culture, because the root of the culture, the capacity to culture, to spread the beauty around in the human environment is the emotion. Okay. So AI doesn't have sensitivity, has only knowledge. If any time knowledge and sensitivity will create a bridge between them, the culture will be in a real danger. Thank you very much.
Now, in the basis of your exposition, and because both of us have the same professor of economics, I have a surprising question. The information, the creativity based on AI remains as a private goods or became a public goods? Because that's the dilemma for us as an economist. Okay, it is about a problem of ethics, responsibility, etc., property rights, but for us, it is a private or public goods? In the memory of our professor, you must to answer to this
when I was
difficult question, please.
When I was child, I heard that the most translated writer is Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. Now, I have to confess that the most translated writer is Google. But between Google and Cervantes and literature is a big difference. Google helped to the understanding or to the knowledge of the world, but not to the understanding of the world. The IT could inform you, but that's all. Between information and Weltanschauung and understanding, your place in the world, your situation in the world is a big difference. This is the reason why the IT couldn't create illusions, couldn't create Don Quixote de la Mancha, couldn't create another world like the husband and the bride of Chagall flying over the houses of the city. Yes, Google is public. The perception of Cervantes is private. The culture is a problem of relationship between me and the book. This is completely private.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yes. Because we speak about AI, which I call AI.
So,
but when it becomes symbolic, everything will change.
I have a good This discussion, it is a very good proving for a very good question. I am happy. But of course, in our time, when we are young and we are study, everything are try to be in black or white, good or bad. But in my opinion, the AI opened an entire new way of for our vision, for our way to see the things. It is a horse. It is something who show us like I don't know, quantics. It is like in something who must be interpreted in a different way. And for this different way, I invite the best guy for this for an explanation. The Florin. Florin, let's be more distance. I give you the microphone because it is interesting to speak. Everybody speak, not from there. There it is for a presentation. I give you about the microphone and I ask you, and be prepared. I have a surprising question for you. Please, Florin.
Thank you very much, because, I have a lot of emotion, not only because I want to say something very unusual to you, but in the same time, it's in this room that has a specific, let's say, mood, and it gives you the idea of importance. So I want to share with you something. I don't categorize. I can only share what I have to learn, because in 1980, I discovered the complexity science. It was the beginning. And I had the chance to meet the academician Radu Voina, that was sensitive to this domain of nonlinear science in the beginning. And it was very important that we create a team and we develop a lot of things. And we make a lot of experiments with what we called in this period the computer. The computer was a Sinclair. It was 54K, his memory. And we make a lot of models that learn as phenomenologic, because in the same time, being in the Polytechnical Institute, I had the chance to meet Mihai Drăgănescu, and I understood what this orthophysics means, and I understood that there is reality must be modeled by informational and at the same time phenomenological reality. You cannot put in words on formula. All the reality is phenomenologic and it's structural. Structure meaning means phenomenological, meaning is inside, and the formal things it's a structure. It's a situation of something like that. After that, I met a lot of people that was involved in this evolution. Every time it was a new computer, and a new environment. We learned to adapt, to put other kind of question. And after 1990, I decided to go outside the Polytechnic. Why? Because in this same domain of activity, if you remain, you became part and to the level of knowledge of this domain. If it's mechanical, you became trapped in the mechanical thinking by definition. And because of that, I go outside the Polytechnical Institute. I go in geodynamics, in geophysics, in Romanian Academy Institute. It was something surprising. Nobody cares about measuring. To measure something, it was time delayed to 11 years for only one period for solar activity. It was not dynamic there, but they had other kind of measurement. There I understood the geosphere, biosphere, and noosphere are linked, and I need to understand something else, that it's geostasis of the global scale. And to deal with this complexity, I developed a lot of thinking, I created, 30 years ago, I created what we say to be NGO, Center for Complexity Studies, that was the first think tank on complexity. And we make a lot of things, coffee shop. It was the coffee shop of complexity, a space in which 10 years we met a lot of people, a sort of TED, in which we discuss about how to think about complexity. What is, in 2022, I believe it was a Nobel Prize on complexity science. And last year it was Nobel Prize in domain of quantum physics. All this was inside. But we had no people to discuss about it, because everyone, even in academics, are very trapped in the activities. They are very focused on problems to must be solved. We were trapped in the idea to put question to the nature. It's sort of new scientific myotics, that it was an art of putting question, the question, and we define the methodology to create a space in which we can feel the questions that are not asked anymore, to define something, to understand a new paradigm, to feel and to adapt the technology for that. And for that, we defined a new domain. this new domain, I put it in a book. The book is, let's say, an essay in which I was helped as a partner, the IE, the partner. So such a partner that I had in the communication, because I was with a feeling, I was with understanding, I had a question, a lot of questions, and he acted like my left hemisphere of the brain, that it's to see like Florin said, to find out the gap between domain. And in this way, I find out and I develop myself in such a way I cannot only share. I don't care in this moment if it's okay or not artificial intelligence. I want to share in this book what I have learned of that. And what I understood, that physics is a very close to idea of what we know mechanical and physical laws. It's a energy conservation paradigm or something like that. No, living system is based on another kind of approach. It's a conservation of coherence in changing. The life modifies this portfolio of living system on the global scale. Has the ability to change during the constriction of the reality. It's change. We are changing. You saw what's happened in if I start to speak, it's difficult to stop.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You offer me the time for surprising question. No?
Yes. So just to understand the jump in from paradigm of using force, constriction, let's say production, solving problems, orientation, so on, to understanding life, I create a text for this presentation, and you can find it on this QR code I put it on the table if you want to have it. And we can discuss. The problem is not to stay into, let's say, teams that fight each other pro and contra. It's useful, but sometimes we need to find out a good question in between and to have an ethics of remain in this, how we say, stage of undetermination, to be capable to feel a good question to go or solve the paradigm. It's an invitation. It's not to judge. It's a judge, you will be the result. Not the idea what it's impossible, or to have a debate, because sometimes debate is very important, but it creates sometimes a dispute, and dispute is not useful for science. Okay, thank you very much.
Florin, I have a very good, surprising question. You speak a lot about beautiful mind, Dragonescu. We can speak in this space for other beautiful mind. I don't know, Tsitseika, for example, no? And others.
A lot of.
What has happened with beautiful mind when the AI came in our world?
It's not a surprise question from my point of view, because it's natural. It's a reaction of fear of something that is changing. We don't know to evaluate the reality in this moment. And so we have a bifurcation, like always in this critical moment. Yes and no. I go not in this bifurcation, because I understand that if I go yes, I define complementary no by definition, because reality is a wholeness approach. So it's a question of mood, or I remain permanently before this kind. And so I wait. It's a sort of ethical gap of trying to find a solution of this kind of very subtle interaction with your profound mind, that's its inspiration or its intuition, to make the connection and to find the jump outside the paradigms. The problem of academy is to go outside the paradigm, not to criticize in advance, in a way, because with us or not, I believe that society is so trapped in neuromarketing now that it is going without me or with me. So I need to be more subtle to help people not to go inside, to trigger by experiment directly, to involve the people in experiment, in the reality, to feel, and after that to go to use this technology. So Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Florin. You show us to discuss how it is, what is the way to discover new frontier here on Earth, not only in the space. And if we want to find new frontier on Earth, not in the space, maybe explain how it is possible. If I ask to Mr. Mironov, how it is possible to find this new frontier here on Earth, not only in the space? Please.
In the minds of the people that went to school. I want to just to show you, to remind you, that 88% of the population of the world, of the 8.3 billions, is going to school. So abnormalities, good brains, will jump from here to there. You never know when a new frontier is. You will touch it, and then someone has to come from the future, as Dorin Pronaro came today and said, it will be human. It will be human. Never mind what you are doing together with the machines. But the machines, as Mihaela said, are trying to make friends with us. They are trying to, as we should be trying all the time. So Florin is an exception. He always had another way of thinking, and he had something very special. He made the people around us come to his brain. Come here. Let's think together. Let's find this extreme pleasure of being able to think of everything. I think that in the future, monasteries, a special place for the academic and university people, will be built here and there on Earth. And some wise people will retire and stay there and keep grinding their minds and making think futures of any kind.
Okay. All your life. All your life, try to start the curiosity from people. It was a mistake because right now I am very curious. I have a surprising question. When I was young, at your TV show, I see enterprise who fly between planets without AI. Right now, all the ships, all the missiles are built in the base of AI. It is a contradiction, an evolution, a new way of understanding. How to explain to my son when he see your TV show with enterprise who fly without AI and see on the TV right now the movie when the ships fly only with AI. Do you have an explanation for this? Okay, it is hard, I know, but you start my curiosity.
Let me just tell you about one episode from Star Trek. Enterprise is going somewhere where they have business. They don't have any business in the cosmos. It's only from our brains. And they meet a small ship having a dead man inside, not a dead man, a cryogenized man inside. He was someone from 1,000 years ago who had an illness, a fatal illness, and he decided himself to cryogenize and stay in the ship and wait for a future, which just came when he met Enterprise. The Enterprise people took him in because 1,000 years everything is possible, revived him, and explained to him who they are. And the man said, okay, so I'm the boss of the world. I'm the richest man of earth. I let money in the bank when I go to my death, and that money is now providing a huge amount of money. So let's go back on earth. And the captain asked him, what is money? What does it mean, bank? Why do you need more than you have? Why do you need more than your brains could provide any time? It was a wonderful, the author of the scenario at the time didn't live long. He only worked for the first line of episodes. So what is going to be between the machine around me? I am Dorin Prunariu. You know, the first question asked Dorin Prunariu in the 1,000 interviews I took from him in the 45 years was, weren't you scared when being in a small bottleneck? No, in a small, simple jug. That's a spaceship that goes up there. And he said, no, I wasn't scared because I had to look at all the machines and the clocks around us and make them think that they work together and they work with me. So I wasn't scared. I jumped up to the orbit to meet the space station. So I think that in the future, the spaceships we shall go with will be wise themselves. Their bones will be the machineries, the electronics, the electrics, the IC, IA, whatever you want, and they will speak to me, the people inside. They will try, as Mihaela said, to make friends with us, and they will. It is unavoidable. Look at the moment when Edison lit the lights on Earth. It was an ontological exploration moment. It changed everything in our brains. We can now think about everything because we got more than 8-10 hours of light space to live in. We made in such a way women could enter the mechanisms besides their natural functions. And I think that we don't have to be scared about the future. I think that what we are now doing, bright minds that you have, had to be transferred to the small people. That's my business. I'm a storyteller, and I pick up stories from your brains, and I screw them. I work on them and make them go to the small minds, to the big minds, to the people around. So we shall try to help. That's why at the Atlantic Ron, the island, 37 years, Sorin came there and all of that. And that's why 450 young people come there, and not only young, university professors come there. They live in tents. And it is a special place where you can speak, talk, discuss about everything you want in the world. Any subject you want, just push it up and it will work. Such monasteries will be made not only for the very bright to be hidden by the society, but also from people trying to flatten that hat, which is the curve of that has the very best, the minds on the right, the small minds on the left, and here in the middle we have it's all of us, most of us, and we have to try to make the positive part of the world work for the world and try to understand each other. So that's what I think. So it's a science fiction socialist opinion.
Thank you. right now I have the sentiment, not only the feelings. We build the science here right now. And because we want to build the science, I don't have more question for someone specified. If someone wants to speak, say something, or have a question, okay, of course, Sorin.
Just want to have a point, and that's an open question to all of you, because we were speaking about knowledge, so the guy who knows, then we had the guy who think, so, and the symbolic, we're gonna bring AI on this pattern too, and then it occurs some world speaking about feelings, about emotions, sentiments, but above all this, it also been touched by Varujan a little bit and by you when you discuss about ethics and moral. You mentioned once it doesn't know what is good, what is wrong. It simply knows true or false. The problem is that when it will gonna go to symbolic, it will push humans against humans. Let me explain. The ethics of a Western country coming from Socrates is not at all the ethics of the Chinese guy. It will push us towards our limits of perception of what means good and bad.
You define the
but what will be the danger to discover the difference of the other? And now I come into economy. You have Joseph Stiglitz, who is a Nobel Prize in economy, who postulates that the value is bringing by the asymmetries, by the differences. So, yeah, when I complete these theories related to tech transfer with collaborative process, not only transactional perspective bringing by Stiglitz, but when you want to collaborate, you need to compensate asymmetries. If not, people will not gonna work together. So when we're gonna be pushed by the symbolic AI towards, there is no limits, as Alexander said, towards our own ethics, which are different from the Sorin ethic, different from the Mao Zedong ethic and so on, we will be able to compensate asymmetries in order to bring farther away humanity or not, and how to avoid conflicts, because the Western ethics, which is the most, I would say, better highlighted by the Americans, each time when they discover something different, first reaction, shoot first.
No, because in my opinion, the AI ameliorate the asymmetry of information between China and Western side of the world. Okay, you define the huge conflict in the world, not as a war, as a conflict of idea, of course. But AI, it is not possible AI to improve the situation of asymmetry.
The connective AI will gonna migrate due to Amilab Zianlucan to symbolic AI. So it will not only be only the guy who knows. It will be the guy who knows and plus the guy who think. So, and this will gonna push us towards our responsibility related to ethics. And we discover that our ethic is not the same ethic that other guys. So how we're gonna react and how to keep it human. in terms of humanistic, I will say, to keep it towards collaboration versus conflict. Because, by the way, as I mentioned, the Greek following ethic exposed at the summum by the American conquest of the West, showcased that our way of thinking is shoot first, then discuss. Well, Chinese ethics is different. They don't shoot first. They don't shoot first. They observe. And that's very strange. I will better bet on them than on us. You know what I mean? But let's keep this in mind. The guy who knows plus the guy who think, and then ethic and moral above everything. How to keep it humanistic.
Please. I agree, but I want to share with you what's happened in a period of 1983. I buy a first video. I could, it was a price around the car. I don't buy a car, but I buy a video to be capable to see things and to share things. And I go with a TV set and a video to the school in the university to show the people what I put in the image, not in words, because in words you don't pay attention, but in dynamic you can share more profound. And in one, and I had an open space in which I discuss, I put movie and discuss with friends and every weekend. And there's happened something very strange. Somebody give me a movie that it was a sort of horror movie. And in this moment, it was the only cassette that I had. And some friends with a small child came. We came to see a movie. I have only a very scary movie. You came with a child. I 3 years old. I cannot put it. And say, no, we don't go so much to space to be here. Yeah, we want to see. I tried to avoid, but I couldn't. And I put the movie. And the movie was what we call now a scary movie or a horror movie. It's absurd. But then it was only some piranha in a lake with a lot of small blood in color. For the first time, it was not easy to support. And I tried to make something that this little guy don't pay attention to the scene. He was the only one, but I couldn't. He was so dynamic. He saw. And what was his result, or his exclamation? Look how happy are the fishes. You know? So it's, for me, it was a very interesting idea. And I finished with the idea that electrical light doesn't come with a permanent and very profound research of a candle. Sometimes are some thresholds, a discontinuity that modify ourselves in a very dramatical way if we saw or judge with a paradigm that we are living in. Yeah, from my point of view, I cannot learn ethics. Ethics is a level of consciousness. You need to be embedded. You don't learn it because something that is learned, you can use it only in a context, and after a while, you cannot be clear and profound. So without a jump in consciousness, we cannot survive. That is clear. And ethics is a moment of that. Ethics became a part of our jump in another dimension, philosophical dimension. It seems philosophy, we lose the philosophy pity, that it was mankind, a very interesting thing I told you. And I finished with this idea. No, I didn't hear from academic, even from science, even from engineering and so on. I didn't heard about, how to say, andragogy and heutagogy. Andragogy is the pedagogy of an adult. We have no ability to learn. We have a diploma, it's enough. No, we need to learn every time. It's a dynamic. And heutagogy is a self-learning process. We need to learn self-learning process. And there are, even in Romania, some PhD theses on that. Okay, let's do it.
Thanks a lot, Sorin. Thanks a lot. Till the end, we must to make something. to congratulate Răzvan, to congratulate Sorin for this occasion. Please come in the front. Răzvan, please come here for nothing. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Okay.
For final remarks.
Yes. I want final remarks. Go ahead. Why would we? No, I don't know what to go there. Go there. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dragos Guru, for the moderation of this last part. Now, my last remarks are very simple. Before taking leave of you, David, do you want to make any final remarks at this point? Come on. Thank you very much, David Coates, Executive Secretary of the Academia Europaea. My first David, to just try and answer to that. The first reaction I had when Trump 2.0 came up was this a feeling that surrealism was opening a new chapter unknown to me. I couldn't think about it in these terms, which is the surrealism of the golf course and of the saloon. I never imagined this association between a saloon and surrealism, which to me was a very sophisticated form of upper class bourgeois interwar art. So that was fine. I said, fine. But then he got down to business, and then he started to do things that went way beyond my wildest visions of surrealism. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you all for this. I should start in the reverse order to thank Dragos Huru for turning this last session into something very vivid, very provocative, and I'm very thankful to him for that, because you could see that I had to intervene, because at some level, all this energy there was, bursting, and that made me relive experiences which were very formative to me. The experiences to which Alexander Mironov directed us in every way. And then our dreams of a science of complexity that were brought back to the fore. So all these things. So yes, it was nostalgic, and in the same time provocative and inspiring. And I think this is the spirit in which we wanted to meet. So finally, the Academia Europaea Bucharest Hub closes the first edition of its hub days. We shall convene again in 1 year. Next year, we'll concentrate on a different topic, which starts discussing the traditional topic in the Western humanities related to the decay of the West, the Untergang des Abendlandes revisited. And this is going to bring together people from all kinds of fields in the humanities and social sciences. I'm working on this very hard together with a dear colleague from Berlin, professor at the University of Leipzig, Ștefan, and I will collaborate with others as well. But the next event that will bear the stamp of this hub is the annual conference of the Utopian Science Studies Society, which is chaired by Greg Clays, here present. This will take place from the 1st to the 3rd of July. Then there will be a conference on abuses against history and historians from the 29th to the 31st of October. Next year, after this edition of the Hub Days, which is regular, we shall be very happy and proud to host the annual conference of the Academia Europaea. This will take place in Bucharest, as I said, from the 12th to the 16th of October. And the general topic that I suggested and seems to be agreed on is Academia Europaea cui prodest quo vadis. It will be an opportunity for the entire community of the Academia Europaea to rethink its strategy, not only in terms of outreach, but also in terms of ways of surviving and being meaningful and being relevant in a complex, rapidly changing society. And my position on this, as it is known by the board of trustees of the Academia Europaea, is that we need to develop the existing pattern of the hub. One example is here. Other examples are coming up. This is something that I think the Academia Europaea is going to do in the next years. So thank you very much. Thank you all. See you next time.
Let's stay here. Mm. Il a dit que, oui, il a dit que voilà, c'est ça, ouais. Ouais. Ah ouais. Ah. Mm. 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 Ouais. Mm. Ah oui. Comme ça là, je vais là-bas ou en tenant celui-ci?
Oui, justement. Excusez-moi. Ok, je vais prendre une. C'est bon. Excusez-moi.
Okay.